and our session moderator, Renuka Methil, Managing Editor, Forbes Africa. 20 minutes on the clock.
Good morning. There's a lot of action happening in the crypto space in Africa. And with me are these two very tall gentlemen with some very towering ambitions for the continent in that space, Maurice and James Zhang. Chris, let me start with you. You're the founder of Yellow Card, right? You've managed to garner about $57 million in funding. You've got over 16 offices, over customers. Already in Africa, you've been to half the continent already, right? So how have you managed to get this crypto market in Africa? Because people are still trying to understand it, and it's a new wave of blockchain technology that is sort of leapfrogging or about to leapfrog the financial services sector. And you started this in a university dorm in Alabama, so when you were 19.
Thank you.
To the Vice President, to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, to the Ambassador.
Sure, go for it.
Oh, is it good? Oh, cool. Yes, yeah, well, no, thank you so much. It's great to be here. Yeah, we started from a dorm room in Alabama, and then I met a Nigerian man on the internet that told me to do this. And as all good stories start, now I'm here. And so, and so, yeah, I mean, look, I think when you think about crypto in Africa, I think the important thing to remember is that this is one of the first technologies that the continent is not behind on, right? I mean, the internet developed in other parts of the world first and then came here, as did mobile technology. Crypto is not developing other parts of the world and then coming here. Crypto is developing here first and foremost. You have more users every day using crypto, using blockchain technology in Africa than any other continent in the world outside of Asia. And it's a very practical use case here, right? People are using crypto here for payments, for savings, for remittance, for moving money around, right? It's not a casino the way that it is for most people in the US or Europe. And so I think that's, you know, when we talk about crypto and adoption on the continent, that's the most important thing to remember, is that the continent is actually leading the way in terms of adoption in the world. And so that's the most important thing to remember for people that are trying to do business here, right? And for regulators as well, right? That it's not something that you need to wait on the US and Europe to regulate. Africa is leading the charge. Africa should be the one determining how this is regulated for the rest of the world.
It's time for Africa. When Jack Dorsey came, the American entrepreneur, he came to Africa in 2019, he said, Africa is going to define the Bitcoin future. And Chain Analysis has also said that this is one of the biggest crypto, it has one of the biggest crypto adoption rates in the world. James, you're also in this space. James is also an under 30. You're already in what, 14 markets in Africa, 14 countries in Africa. You've also managed to garner about $30 million in funding. And he's a third generation African. He's lived in the DRC, he was born and brought up in the DRC. So you've got a very interesting concept as well. You said that you're coming up in July with this. The under 30s are going to love this. It's called the Hustler's Phone. It's $100. It's called Jambo Color. And it's going to have built-in Web3 and everything else, the e-wallet, all of that built into it. And he said, when I spoke to him last week, that it's going to be financial stability in your handset or your hand phone. And then you're also launching a software app for that later this year. Can you take us a little bit, back to where it all started? You were very young when you started out on this, and then what is the future for this, the crypto market? What's the kind of adoption that you're seeing in your space?
That's a loaded question right there. I'll do my best. Well, first I just want to thank everyone. This is my first Forbes Under 30 Summit, so thank you Forbes, thank you the government of Botswana, thank you Mr. President for being here. I appreciate everyone here, for real. Thank you. Quick background on myself. Let's jump into Jambo real quick, my thoughts there. I grew up in Kinshasa, 18 years in the DRC. Family's been there 3 generations, so not too far from here. We're in 14 countries right now, hopefully in 15 after this trip, sir. Yes, sir. No, so Jambo, what we do is we're building the Web3 super app of Africa to create the Earn ecosystem. Essentially, how we want to do that is bridge the infrastructure from Web3 to Africa. Because like Chris said, Africa leads the way in, I think, peer-to-peer transactional volume, no matter what data you want to look at. But the problem is infrastructure. Now, let's take a step back even. How did Southeast Asia, another emerging market, blow up previously in 2021 due to play to earn and that whole movement? Is because the infrastructure was there. Binance was there to provide dollar trading pairs. There was a guild that helped people preload NFT wallets, and et cetera. The point I'm getting to, in Africa, that's not really a possibility right now, even though there's 50% smartphone penetration. So it makes no sense. So yeah, Jambo, essentially we aim to do this by bridging infrastructure through both software and hardware. Now for the most fun part, I'd say, of this entire speech, what I'm going to say is, yes, we just launched the Jambo Color. It's a $99 smartphone with pre-installed technology applications. It's called the Hustler phone. The reason is because it helps you hustle to make money and create value through spending your time on the applications that are inside the phone. Because how does every tech company in today's world get valued? Honestly, to me, it's just one metric: users and user growth. You never make money from your users. Let's use a tech company that has a lot of users in this world. You know, ByteDance, let's say, right? A lot of people go on TikTok. ByteDance has never made $1 from their users. They make money from other tech companies that want to interact with their users. So that is essentially what we want to do as well. We want to bring the best applications to the phone, inside the phone. So when you're, say, a 20-year-old in Botswana, in Lagos from university, you can already be spending time on the phone and make money.
So when I spoke to Chris last week, he said he's using Web3 and and the crypto to actually resolve some of the Web2 problems that Africa is facing. And remittance costs are very high. You're trying to come up with a payment system. You've got a new payments API as well that you launched last week. Africa is really ripe for the picking, because you can actually, because we don't have the legacy of the financial system, you can actually leapfrog in the financial services sector. How are you changing this perception of, remittances, sending payments across the continent? How have you managed to change the perception, and more so in the smaller markets that you're in? Not the bigger economies, even in the smaller markets.
I mean, I think the best way to think about it is that the entire system at this point is antiquated, right? The idea that the US dollar should be the only currency that's able to be used and move around the world, and the idea that all international transactions have to happen on the US dollar is an antiquated system. And frankly, it's a system that was designed to work against Africa, not to work for Africa. Right? I mean, the fact that countries have to have a certain amount of dollars in reserve for their currency to be stable for international transactions and imports, exports to flow, right? This was not a system designed for the continent, right? This was a system designed for the US, for Europe, for the West. And so when you think about that, now you have this new technology in crypto where transactions can flow, money can enter the economy very easily, right, without the banking system, without other people having to take a cut. And so, like you said, with remittance is a great example of things that crypto can solve. Because right now, on average, it costs about 9% to send money to the continent, right? You have $80 billion a year flowing to the continent, and people are paying 9% to send that. Think about what $7 billion could do for Africa. Think about what $7 billion more could do if it was in this economy, right? If it was in Botswana, if it was in Nigeria, if it was in Kenya. Think about how much more value that money could provide there than it would going into Western Union's pockets or into another big international company that just frankly has enough, right? And so I think again, when we think about crypto, and when we think about the way that it's used, especially on the continent, those are the use cases that are first and foremost, right? And when you talk about smaller economies and smaller countries and the way that crypto has been adopted, I think there's no better place to look than Botswana, right? Botswana has, I mean, for us, right, speaking personally for Yellow Card, right, Botswana is #3 for us in terms of active users, right? This is a fantastic market, right? It's an open economy, right? It's a very welcoming economy for business. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, Botswana is really taking the lead in terms of crypto regulation. right? The only crypto license on the continent is here in Botswana.
And they've issued it first to you.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. And so it's been, look, it's been great working with Mbifira, working with the Bank of Botswana, and and just going through that process of helping them with developing that. And yeah, it's it's great to see a country in Africa, like we said, leading the way on that regulation, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to do it and then trying to copy that.
And you're also Pan-Africa's largest cryptocurrency exchange. Did you actually see this happening? Because you came to Nigeria without a return ticket when you first started.
Yes, the first time in Nigeria. No visa, no shots, no return ticket, had no idea what I was doing, met a guy on the internet that told me to do it, and basically landed there with, the option of either make this business work or live in Nigeria for the rest of my life. And so, now we're the largest exchange on the continent, and that's all that we focus on, right? Is just how do you take African fiats and bridge that gap? How do you help money enter local currency, local economies through crypto, and how do you help people in the local economy access crypto, access Web3, access international markets?
And I'm going to come to that point that you made with me earlier. You said fintechs have to have the crypto and Web3, and most of the fintechs you see are already doing that in Africa. And I've been speaking to a lot of young people here, and there seems to be a lot of understanding and eagerness to jump onto the same bandwagon and do the same. So, James, can you just take us through some of the challenges that you faced in terms of the regulatory environments on the continent? Regulation is a very gray area, and more so with the collapse of FTX very famously last year. That sort of trust that the consumer also needs to have in crypto. What are your thoughts on that?
I think honestly, it's like Chris said, Botswana is the only country in Africa that has a license for crypto, which is quite incredible, because forget even licensing, to even have regulations for cryptocurrency is a blessing for founders like us that deal with the in and out and the government in various jurisdictions. So full props to the Botswana government. That's very forward thinking. I think, honestly, if you look at any industry, right, in the beginning, it's always going to be all kinds of problems. Even Nike, right? Nike in the very beginning was super cash flow positive. I know it doesn't really relate right now, but banks still shut them down. Banks didn't give them banking because it was too risky. Sounds kind of like crypto right now. I think the broader picture I would rather be thinking about every day is, since growing up in Africa, our family, we diversify, we invest in infrastructure, and you see these fund managers, and you see different guys building in Africa, and it's always wondering the same thing. Is this the decade that entrepreneurs in Africa can make it? Is this a decade where infrastructure is there and is for Africans to come through? Because all the statistics are there. Chris just told you all the flows, all the money coming in. And honestly, guys like Yellow Card is amazing. The largest crypto company in all Pan-Africa. I'd say 95% of my investors have never invested in Africa or heard about Africa, never been here. Like, most of my due diligence was telling them about Africa, not even Jambo, what I do. Then maybe we are the right person to do this. So same as Chris, is bringing money into the region. I think that's always helpful. And I think one more thing is, a lot of what we think about at Jambo is talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. I find that very true. But we think that education can level the playing field. So our approach from the beginning, day one, our first product last year is called Jambo Academy, a learn-to-earn 10-week program app. Every week you can learn something about crypto. Say week 1, you learn about exchanges. You can earn tokens from certain exchanges. Week 2, you learn about cross-chain, multi-chain, layer 2s. You can earn different other tokens. The idea is that people will understand the concept that from their phone, they can get access to the broader financial infrastructure and find financial freedom. They can bypass legacy gatekeepers. So honestly, I know Web3 might have different connotations in today's world in different markets, bull, bear, etc. But I think it's the idea behind of it that helps people leapfrog past legacy gatekeepers, is why it's interesting for Africa for me.
So personally, one of the biggest things that I find challenging is in understanding the crypto space is understanding the terminology, Dogecoin, stablecoin, altcoin, there's so many coins, USDC, USDT, Tether, Ether. It keeps changing, it's very volatile. teach people like me, because Africa, although it's 70% of the continent, sub-Saharan Africa, is younger people, but you also need to integrate the older, the dinosaurs like us. So, you know, how you're talking about small business, but also big business needs to be incorporating this kind of technology. So what's the multi-generational approach? You obviously need to upskill the older people and use the existing younger database and incorporate them, like you said, with the academy. So a very quick answer for that. Sorry, Chris.
Sister, you know, it's a good thing that this is such a young continent, because there's plenty of people that can teach everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's one thing I love about young people, it's that, you know, it's very easy to sort of get up to date with new technology, right? And so, fortunately, it's not just us that have to teach people and have to teach anybody else about, you know, what is crypto and how do you use it, right? You got a whole continent of people ready to help and ready to teach you, right? But no, I mean, look, you're 100% right. I think that any business in the world, never mind just Africa, but certainly any business operating on the continent should be looking at how crypto, how stablecoins can help benefit their operation, right? How it makes it more effective to move money into the continent, right? How it makes more effective to move money around, to make payments, all of that, right? And so I would encourage anybody in a position like that to start looking into crypto, right? Reach out to somebody, do your own research, right? And try to understand it, right? But I think, you know, to your point, I think crypto can be scary at first, right? It's, you know, there's a lot to learn. And I would say, you know, the easiest and just sort of most straightforward thing that businesses can benefit from is stablecoins, right? USDT, USDC, stablecoins on blockchain pegged against the US dollar. There's no fluctuations, right? It's not going up and down like Bitcoin. And it just makes the ability to move dollars and move value around the world so much simpler, right? It just simplifies the entire process for these big companies.
I think the EU has just announced a new legislation called MiCA. I read about it yesterday. And also, you mentioned that the Bitcoin is going to be the national currency of Africa. You're talking about a single market with the CFTA. Maybe can you just tell us a little more about why you said that to me? National currency.
I don't think there'll be a national currency for a continent, right? So definitely that's different, not just for all of Africa. But I think just being a founder in this space, you know, since buying my first Bitcoin in 2015, it's just you believe it that much that it will essentially overtake governments and help governments be a reserve currency because of what it is. I think that's a long way from now. And you see, to get exposure, that is easy, right? You just buy some Bitcoin, put it in your cold storage, and leave it there. But I think what's a little trickier and what's more interesting is seeing the actual talent and the development behind this entire industry. Because that's like, you see where the talent goes. It's like years ago, kids graduating would want to go to Goldman, different types of banks. After that, you're going to the FANG, the Facebook, you know, et cetera, the large Silicon Valley. After that, now it might be the Coinbases and some of the more, you know, forward thinking. So I think where talent goes, generally is a trickle down, pretty good to see where the economy will.
What's the value of the Bitcoin now? It's come down, I think.
For Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Don't look at it now, look at where it's going to be in 5 years.
How many in the audience actually have cryptocurrency, if I can see a show of hands? No, it's just 2 or 3.
I see you.
My brothers and sisters, we're going to work on that.
We got to do our job better. Yes, sir.
So if you look at the crystal ball for the next, let's say, this market is going so quickly, evolving so quickly, let's say the next 2 years, one word to describe the crypto future of Africa, for both of you, before we wind up. I have like a minute.
One word.
Okay, 2 words.
Exciting. It's
okay.
One word.
Yeah, one more.
That's good. Speed.
Speed. Okay.
You know, the rest of the world is sleeping on the speed and the innovation in Africa right now.
Okay.
And there's only so much that we can do that you see on Twitter, that you see on news articles, if people don't come here. So I think conferences like this really bring people to the nation, and that's what's different. Yeah.
Great.
James said something important earlier, which is that most of our investors have never been to Africa. They don't really know anything about Africa. And I would encourage any investors in the room that have not invested in Africa that at this point, it's not about diversification. At this point, it's somewhat irresponsible to not be looking at the continent.
Right.
as a future of growth for your investors and everybody else?
Great. I think it just boils down to an exciting future, as you said, and hopefully the speed will be very, very rapid. Ladies and gentlemen, the man with the largest cryptocurrency exchange in Africa, the man who wants to make a continental currency of Bitcoin. Thank you.
Now for a special spotlight. Please welcome Iris